Alright, hello everybody. My name is Justin. For my first video on my channel, I just kind of wanted to sit down with some unfiltered thoughts and talk about software engineering in general, where I'm at in my journey as a developer, as well as work on some Neetcode. So, I guess we'll start with a little bit of Neetcode, like prerequisite why I'm doing it. So I'm a senior software engineering student, and I graduate in April, and I'm getting ready for job interviews. And I have not done good at preparation. So I've had some internships before, and I've done Leetcode in the past for basic preparation, simple data structures and algorithms, but this time I'm jumping in from scratch. And as you can see here, I've already solved this one, but it's always good to go back and actually practice ones you've solved, and not only see if you can solve it from a different approach, but see if you can remember how you solved it the first time without looking anything up. So yeah, before I jump into solving the problem, I just wanted to kind of say, first of all, to those of you who are new developers or struggling, I feel you and I understand you. And it's a normal feeling to feel like everybody else in your field is above you and doing so great, and everybody is getting opportunities and offers that you might never see coming your way. And I think that's just not true. I think for everybody right now it's hard. Those who are skilled and those who are just trying to get through the door to get a job. But yeah, this video, I'm not going to edit it. I'm not going to do anything too fancy. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything about how you can get better as a developer, how you can get a job. I'm going to give you some of my advice / experience and how I've kind of navigated this tricky path, and I also just want to do some Neetcode. So one of the things I'm going to try and do is, if not every day, but maybe a couple days out of the week, I'm going to record a video and show how I'm solving it on Neetcode and kind of document my journey as I learn data structures and algorithms. I have a background in C++. I've been learning it for about 7 months now. I've learned Python in the past, and I've basically forgotten everything when it comes to that. If I was to be handed a problem and they asked me to solve it in Python, I could be like, well, you could probably do this, and it would probably just be pseudocode at that point. Which is not bad, but it's also, that just means I need to practice. And I think that's a normal thing, is as you're learning other technologies, you kind of have to pick one thing that you're really good at, because you can't have 10 different languages you learn and be a master at all of them, at least unless you're a superhuman, which I'm definitely not. But let's jump into this first problem. So while I solve this, I'll talk to you guys how I would approach it, talk about maybe how I'm understanding it works. If I get anything wrong, please feel free to give me feedback and talk to me. And yeah, I'm open to criticism if it's fair and constructive as well as positive. I think that there are ways to tell someone they're wrong without yelling at them or swearing or telling them, putting them down, essentially. And that's just how good human interaction should work. Anyways, let's go into this problem. So this is contained duplicate. This is the first problem in Neetcode 150 as well as Blind 75. I really like Neetcode because, not only because it's just a little bit more structured, but I do like supporting smaller creators as well as, well, I wouldn't say Neetcode's a small creator, but I think that it's a really good platform for developers who are learning. And sometimes you just need something simple to get the job done rather than have an entire list of problems that you could solve but might not really apply to what you're applying to. Yeah. Anyways, I hope the music's good. I hope everything's good with this video. If you guys have any suggestions, please feel free to let me know. For this first one, we're going to do a brute force approach, which brute force essentially is saying, I'm going to go through each individual element and pass over it, and check every element and compare it to every other element. So this would be a time complexity. Let me write this better. So this would be a time complexity of O of n squared. And that is just because we're going to be using two loops for this approach. And that means one loop would essentially be O of n, which is saying, hey, for every number in this list, we're going to go over it. We're going to go over every number, meaning, let's say we have the four elements in this list, that would be n-sized, which it's arbitrary because obviously that could be infinity or like 10,000 elements, but it's still the same time complexity because the size is kind of arbitrary in a sense. But I would first start by saying let's have a for loop. And forgive me for looking down at my keyboard. I'm learning touch typing. I'm getting there. It's taken some practice for sure. But we'd want to initialize int, not int, nothing. We'd say I is equal to our index that we're tracking. And then we would want to do I is actually going to be less than nums.size, which essentially means, hey, we're not going to go over however many elements are in this list. So you know how we said that it's n-sized? That means it'll go through all of the elements in the list, whether it's 2 elements or 10,000. Like let's say if we did nums I is less than 10, it would only go over the 10 elements that we 0 through 9, essentially index 0 through 9. But we're going to say nums.size because we want to visit everything. And then we would increment, so that means I++ is meaning, hey, we're going to go to the next element every time we visit one. So that's our first loop, is that basically just means, hey, we can visit everything in this list. Now, if we want to compare two integers, meaning we want to say, hey, I want to see at index 2 if index 3 is the same number. Or let's say I'm at index 0, I want to check if index 1 is. For this, I would say we'd simply want to have another for loop, and we'd say int j, which is typically another naming convention that is used, especially in C++. J is just another name for, hey, another tracking, we're tracking another index. J is equal to I plus 1, so we're going to keep track of whatever is in front of where we're at. So let's say that we're at 1, or index 0, I plus 1, which would be then j, is going to be equal to 2, or index 1. And then we would also want to make sure that this goes through the entire nums array, so nums.size, which this is C++, so it's called a vector, which is it's basically an array. It's just different naming. And then we'd also increment this as well. So now to do the actual operation, we want to say, hey, we want to check if these two are equal. We want to say, hey, we want to say nums of I, if nums of I is equal to nums of j, meaning, hey, if these two values are equivalent, let's say that index 2 and index 3 are the same value, then we will return true. Otherwise, if that never reaches that case, then we would just return false down here. So this only meets this will only trigger true if it meets the conditions that we're asking for in this problem. So this is a pretty brute force approach, which I will also do a faster approach in a minute. But if we run this, it should pass. What did I do wrong? If nums of I, not num. See, and that's what being a programmer is about. You gotta fix errors like that. Before I jump into the next solution, I kind of also want to talk about what my channel is about. So on my channel, I've actually been streaming for the last month or so. Maybe 2 months actually. I've been streaming since around November. Kind of going over C++ mainly. There's learncplus.com, which is where I've been doing most of my learnings, and I've learned a lot so far. I've kind of taken a break as I've stepped back to take care of my mental health as well as my family, and just taking better care of my health in general. And that's important as a programmer or in any field, is just make sure if you feel yourself getting burned out, try and like pull back a little and come back to it when you got more energy and time. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing now, is I'm making it a habit rather than a bore or something that I feel like is a necessary step. It is a necessary step, but I'm not trying to make it feel like I have to do this every single day at this time in order to feel like I'm accomplished. It's more of hey, if I do this and I make a habit out of it, it'll be easier once it's a habit to then do it, and then I'll learn as a essentially as a symptom of that habit, I guess you could call it, or side effect. So yeah, now let's reset this and let's do a much faster solution. So in C++, we have a data structure called an unordered set. And it's just essentially a set, which the type is going to be int, which is the numbers we're tracking. And I could just call this set. And a set is essentially, it sorts a set of numbers, so like our array, it sorts it from least to greatest typically, but it's a sorted data structure of values, or it's a container that holds values that are sorted. And this would be a little bit different of an approach. So we'd want to say int num, and this is a range-based for loop. So we're actually declaring num as a new integer or variable, and then we're going to say, hey, we're going to keep track of every num in nums, and then we want to say, hey, if our set that we have that we just made contains our num, then we want to return true, because that means, hey, we found a match. And then after that, we essentially want to do, hey, set.insert, and then we want to insert whatever that num is that matched. And then otherwise, we'd want to return false, and that is just the typical case. But essentially what we're saying here is, hey, we want to make sure that for every num in nums, so every number, if our set contains the nums that we're searching for, and not nums, we do if set.contains num, we'd return true, and then we would insert that. So let's see if that passes, and yes, it does. So this is actually a better approach because we're only iterating over the loop once rather than twice, and this would make it O of n time. So let's submit this, and we can see all of the test cases passed, and we got 1 millisecond. Now, can we get a faster time than this? Probably. I would say, yeah. Let's see. Let's analyze this really quick. But yeah, I got a time complexity and space complexity of O of n, and n is the number of elements in the input vector. So yeah, that's just kind of like a very simple solution to how I would go about solving a problem like this. If I get stuck, I would typically look up the documentation. So like I would say, hey, what is an unordered set? What is a hash map? What is all of these things that could help me get to a solution that's faster. But yeah, that's kind of just what I wanted to do for this first video regarding my career on this channel. I stream every day or every other day. A couple times a week I'll stream and either work on some coding projects, maybe play some games, or just talk with my chat. I'm trying to get to 100 subs, and I'm almost there, and I really appreciate everybody that's subscribed so far. I'm just trying to make this a platform of where people can come and feel understood and feel like they can relate, but also like a place where people can want to offer help or need help, where we can talk to each other, and that's kind of what my community is about, and that's what I'm trying to build here on this platform. I do have a Discord link in the description if you guys want to check it out and join and come and chat. Please feel free to leave some feedback in the chat and in the comments, and I really appreciate you guys being here and watching this video. And yeah, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and feel free to check out other vids in the future. Thank you.